What if I told you that the recent celebration around the closure of a child SA investigation might not just be premature, but tragically naive? Welcome back to the channel where we uncover the truth Christian media is too afraid to touch. Today, we're digging deep into a developing case involving Daystar Television Network and the Lamb family, a story that's shaking the foundations of trust in Christian broadcasting. And the Colleyville Police Department recently announced the closure of a case involving Pete, allegedly a close family member of Joni Lamb. According to police, the case was closed not because Pete was cleared by hard evidence, but because the alleged victim, a 5-year-old child, has not yet spoken. And yet, almost immediately, Joni Lamb, her daughter Rachel Lamb Brown, and Daystar TV issued triumphant public statements online. They declared the case's closure as vindication for Pete. To them, this wasn't just a development, it was proof of innocence. But is it really? Let's take a step back. Jonathan Lamb and his wife Suzy, Joni's own son and daughter-in-law, have alleged something heartbreaking and deeply disturbing, that Pete, a trusted figure within the Lamb family, molested their 5-year-old daughter. And even more disturbing, they allege that Joni Lamb not only failed to act, but actively covered up the incident to protect Pete, not the child. There's a chilling detail in their account. Jonathan and Suzy say their daughter completely shut down after a private meeting with her grandmother, Joni. Since that moment, the little girl has never spoken again about the incident. So here's the question no one at Daystar wants to answer. What happened in that meeting? Did Joni Lamb knowingly or unknowingly silence her granddaughter? Was a child's trauma brushed aside to protect a television empire? Suzy Lamb recently posted a haunting message on X, formerly Twitter, and her words cut deep. 5-year-olds slowly but surely grow up, and one day they're 20 or 21. They remember it all, and they speak, and justice comes. She followed this with a tribute to survivors, crying tears of both joy and pain, and her warning to the Lamb family couldn't be clearer. Don't celebrate too soon, because history proves her point. Let's look at real documented cases from the past 40 years that prove that in matters of child SA, justice may be delayed, but it is rarely denied. Take the case of Robert Morris, founding pastor of Gateway Church. In 2025, over 40 years after the abuse allegedly occurred, Morris was indicted on 5 felony counts. The victim, Cindy Clemisher, had been just 12 years old when the abuse started in the early 80s, but it took her decades to find the courage, support, and legal avenues to speak up and be heard. Then there's Tom Kesey Jr., former media officer for Faith Life Church. In 2025, he was indicted on 27 charges, including 11 counts of child rape. His victims, children as young as 5. Some of these crimes occurred in the early 2000s, yet they only surface now due to years of silence, shame, and institutional cover-up. And how about Mike Bickle, the founder of the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, widely known as iShop KC? His alleged abuse spanned decades and targeted at least 17 women. The allegations were buried beneath spiritual manipulation and hero worship, only surfacing publicly in 2023. 2 years later, an independent investigation confirmed a pattern of abuse and spiritual grooming. Or Daryl Gilliard, a former Southern Baptist preacher convicted in 2009. Before his conviction, 44 women had reported him to church authorities with allegations dating back to the early 1990s. He was protected by powerful figures within the church. They vouched for him, moved him around, enabled him. Sound familiar? And it's not just isolated incidents. Michael Brown, a prominent voice in the Messianic Jewish movement, faced allegations of emotional and sensual misconduct dating back to the early 2000s. An investigation in 2025 concluded there was substantial evidence of wrongdoing, but again, it took decades. Most recently, Joe Campbell, a pastor tied to Jim Backer's Morningside Church, was accused by 5 women of child SA in multiple Assemblies of God churches throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Authorities were repeatedly notified, yet he escaped prosecution until now. Why? Because of statutes of limitations, fear, and silence. So when the Lamb family and Daystar celebrate the closure of a police investigation, we have to ask, do they truly believe this is over? Let's be clear. Most cases involving child victims aren't closed because the accused is found innocent. They're closed because the child can't speak or won't speak or isn't ready or was threatened. The mind of a 5-year-old simply isn't equipped to process, articulate, or even understand trauma, especially if that trauma came from someone they were taught to trust, especially if the people closest to them insist it didn't happen. And yet these children grow up. And when they do, they remember, and that's when the storm hits. Children grow, they develop, they find their strength, and eventually they break free from their abusers, from the silence, and from the institutions that once failed to protect them. This is why any celebration of a case closed decision, especially when the allegations involve child victims, should be approached not with relief, but with deep, cautious skepticism. Because as we've already seen, what is closed today may simply be dormant tomorrow. Robert Morris, with over 40 years between the alleged abuse and his indictment. Tom Kesey, who operated freely for over a decade before multiple victims courageously came forward. Mike Bickle, whose empire of influence kept his misconduct hidden for decades. Daryl Gilliard, Michael Brown, and countless others, men whose institutions knew but did nothing until it was too late. These are not exceptions. These are not one-offs. These are patterns. According to clinical research, the average delay in disclosure for childhood sexual abuse is approximately 20 years. That's 2 decades of silence, shame, internal conflict, and trauma. And it's not because victims are lying. It's because trauma rewires the brain. It distorts memory. It buries the language needed to speak up. And when the abuser is someone close, someone trusted, someone powerful, the child often has no idea how to process what happened, let alone report it. And so they wait. They wait until they're older, until they feel safe, until they have therapy, until they hear someone else speak out and realize they're not alone, until the culture shifts enough to believe them, and then they speak. And when they do, it's like a dam breaking. What once felt like an isolated story becomes part of a wave, a collective reckoning that uncovers not just a single abuser, but an entire system of silence, suppression, and complicity. That's why this narrative being pushed by Joni Lamb, Rachel Lamb Brown, and Daystar Television Network is so dangerous. Celebrating a case closed ruling when a 5-year-old hasn't even found the words yet, that's not vindication. That's willful blindness. History makes one thing very clear. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. And when it rises, it doesn't just implicate the abuser, it exposes everyone who protected them. So if you're watching this and you're part of a ministry, a board, a church, or a media platform that's tempted to celebrate the closure of abuse allegations, pause. Ask yourself, are we rejoicing because we're truly innocent or because the victim hasn't spoken yet? Because if the only reason your name is cleared is silence, then your celebration is not justice. It's a countdown. Let's review this again. Robert Morris, accused in the 1980s, indicted in 2025. Tom Kesey, abuse starting in 2002, indicted 23 years later. Mike Bickle, allegations dating back decades, only now being brought to light. Joe Campbell, reports since the 1980s, only now facing legal scrutiny. These are not anomalies. They are the timeline of trauma. And the institutions that thought they were in the clear now find themselves scrambling for damage control decades later. What makes this even more tragic is that many of these organizations had a choice. They could have pursued truth. They could have listened to victims. They could have removed leaders, reported crimes, and repented publicly. Instead, they chose silence. They chose NDAs. They chose image over integrity. And now they're losing everything. If you're watching this from inside an organization where secrets are being kept, speak up. If you're a donor, supporter, or follower, ask hard questions. Where is your money going? What does accountability look like? Is the focus really on Jesus or on self-preservation? Because what we allow today shapes what kind of church exists tomorrow. To the victims watching this, whether you're still processing or just now finding the words, we see you, we believe you, and when you're ready, your voice matters more than you know. To the leaders who still have time to do what's right, do it. Don't wait until the headlines hit. Don't wait until the lawsuit is filed. Tell the truth now. Step down if you must. Apologize if it's warranted. But for God's sake and for the children's sake, stop hiding behind closed cases and legal loopholes, because the children of today become the truth tellers of tomorrow, and their words, when they finally come, have the power to shake empires. Thank you for watching. Please share this video. Let's keep shining a light where others have tried to keep things hidden in the dark. And make sure you subscribe, because we're not done exposing the truth.